Donald Trump is once again at the center of the global political stage, and this time, the focus is on an issue that has remained one of the most painful and intractable problems on the geopolitical map for several years now: the resolution of the protracted and bloody conflict in Ukraine. His recent candid admission, made during an interview with major American media, literally exploded across the information space and sparked a storm of discussion among experts, politicians, and ordinary observers alike. I thought it would be easy. This seemingly simple phrase, uttered by the former and potentially future President of the United States, forces one to contemplate the depth of the chasm between initial diplomatic calculations and the harsh realities of modern warfare. It seems we are witnessing a man who, in his political portfolio, has experience in resolving numerous international disputes, and who now, with his characteristic confidence, promises the world community a swift end to one of the most brutal confrontations in recent history. However, these promises, cloaked in the form of loud proclamations, generate a highly ambiguous reaction in society. On one hand, they instill a timid hope for the possibility of a peaceful solution, and on the other, they provoke genuine bewilderment and skepticism regarding their realism. A reasonable question arises. Is the situation truly as simple as Donald Trump portrays it? Or does this apparent optimism hide a misunderstanding of the multi-layered complexity of what is happening? To understand this, we must delve into the context of his statements and analyze the environment in which they were made. But before we continue our in-depth analysis, we would like to address you, our esteemed viewers and readers. If you find such topics important and want to stay informed about all the details and hidden aspects of major international politics, remember to pause the video, subscribe to our channel or blog, and show your support by leaving a like. This helps us grow and prepare even more insightful content for you. And now, let's return to the main topic of our discussion. In his interview, Donald Trump did not hide his profound disappointment with the tragic course that events in Eastern Europe continue to take. Once again, with his signature bluntness, he emphasized his initial position that this destructive conflict, which has claimed tens of thousands of lives and led to colossal humanitarian and economic consequences, was a grave error from the start and should never have escalated into an active phase of combat. He concurred with the interviewer's sentiment, noting that the continuation of armed confrontation, which seems to have reached a positional stalemate, evokes in him a feeling of deep irritation and frustration, as it represents, in his view, a prime example of the ineffectiveness of traditional diplomacy. For Trump, this issue is not only political, but also deeply personal. The former president is convinced that Washington had all the necessary tools and levers of influence to achieve a resolution of the situation in Ukraine much faster and with fewer losses than in the case of most other military campaigns the U.S. has been involved in throughout its history. I thought I had a very good, almost partnership-like relationship with President Putin. I genuinely believed that based on our mutual respect and constructive dialogue, this issue would be resolved easily and quickly, he stated, thereby once again reminding the world of his key philosophy in international relations, which prioritizes personal contact, direct negotiation, and the establishment of informal trust between the leaders of world powers. Interestingly, to bolster his position, Trump draws a direct parallel between the Ukrainian crisis and 8 other protracted military conflicts that, he claims, were successfully resolved thanks to his active mediation and diplomatic talent during his presidency. He emphasizes that some of these conflicts had years, and in some cases decades of history, characterized by deep-seated enmity and mutual distrust between the parties. Yet through skillful and persistent intervention by American diplomacy operating under his direct guidance, it was possible to find mutually acceptable compromises and stop the bloodshed. I know all the intricacies and nuances of conducting complex high-level negotiations, and I am absolutely confident that hostilities in Ukraine can and must cease in the foreseeable future, the ex-president declared emphatically. He added that he sees one of the key, if not the primary, instruments of pressure on the aggressor in the U.S. arsenal as being rigorous economic pressure, specifically targeted actions against countries that continue to purchase Russian energy resources, thereby replenishing the budget of the warring party and essentially financing the continuation of the war. However, the harsh reality of global politics, as is often the case, turned out to be far more complex and multifaceted than initially calculated. All the efforts of the U.S. administration and its European allies to isolate Russia and inflict tangible economic damage through unprecedented sanction packages have, according to many analysts, yielded very mixed and in some ways even weak results. The Russian economy, contrary to gloomy forecasts, has demonstrated a high degree of resilience and an ability to adapt. Against this backdrop, the statement by influential Senator Marco Rubio that the West has almost no real, unused leverage left against Moscow, and that introducing new, even harsher sanctions is currently impossible, sounds like an admission of a certain defeat. This frank and pessimistic assessment from a prominent politician casts serious doubt on Donald Trump's excessive optimism and vividly demonstrates how entangled and deadlocked the situation around Ukraine has become, despite all his confidence in his own diplomatic genius. From the official Moscow side came a characteristically restrained and measured response. The Russian side noted that Mr. Trump's desire to achieve a peaceful settlement certainly evokes exclusively positive feelings and approval in the Kremlin. However, immediately following, as if to temper the fervor of optimists, came the standard caveat that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict possesses an incredibly complex and multifaceted nature, intertwining historical, ethnic, geopolitical, and ideological contradictions with deep roots, and therefore resolving it overnight, with a single phone call, as some politicians might wish, is objectively impossible. The Kremlin routinely reiterates its thesis that Russia has always been and remains open to a constructive negotiation process. Yet, against the backdrop of categorical statements from official Kyiv about the complete and unconditional cessation of any peace talks until the end of the current year, this rhetorical openness appears more as a formality and a nod to political etiquette rather than a genuine readiness for immediate dialogue. The Ukrainian side, it seems, is completely unprepared in the coming months to make any territorial or political compromises that could form the basis for a temporary truce or a permanent peace. This means that even the most active and conscientious efforts by the United States, through its president, are encountering an insurmountable barrier of rigid political realities and the absolutely irreconcilable positions of the parties directly involved in the conflict zone. And yet, Donald Trump continues to insist with remarkable persistence on the correctness and effectiveness of his approach. He continues to see himself as the chief peacemaker mediator, the one man who possesses the necessary will, connections, and experience to jumpstart the stalled peace process. He apparently firmly believes that a combination of targeted economic pressure on countries supporting Russia and his personal informal contacts with the leaders of key world nations can create that critical momentum to accelerate a long-awaited peaceful settlement. The whole world, tired of wars and instability, yearns for calm and security, and I am the man who can deliver it, he declared, being absolutely confident that his unique and unorthodox experience in the sphere of international politics provides him with exclusive opportunities unavailable to career diplomats and representatives of the traditional establishment. But behind these loud political statements and diplomatic maneuvers lies a completely different, bitter reality. The reality of cities and small towns reduced to rubble, millions of ordinary people forced to live in constant fear, deprivation, and agonizing anticipation of a ceasefire that, despite all promises, cannot seem to arrive. In such a tragic and tense context, the words of any, even the most influential world politician, are inevitably subjected to the most meticulous, microscopic analysis, and Donald Trump's unbridled optimism collides with painful obviousness against the paradoxical and harsh truth of life. Paradoxically, even in his sincere striving to achieve a settlement, Trump vividly demonstrates how radically the very nature and algorithms of international diplomacy have changed in the 21st century. Traditional economic levers of pressure, such as sanctions, in the conditions of a globalized and interconnected economy, are gradually losing their former strength and effectiveness, often causing a boomerang effect. Classic methods of mediation and negotiation are severely limited by the radicalization of the parties' positions and the influence of domestic politics on foreign policy. And the Ukraine conflict itself has acquired its own unmanageable dynamic and inertia, which is almost impossible to stop with a single, even the loudest external initiative, without the genuine readiness for peace from the warring parties themselves. In this sense, his loud statement that a settlement seemed easy to him now sounds simultaneously like an ambitious, almost messianic goal, and like a naive, childlike admission that the real world, with its contradictions, tragedies, and complex interests, turns out to be immeasurably more complicated than any, even the most well-thought-out political script written in the quiet of Washington offices. Nevertheless, his rhetoric and his position continue to attract the close attention of leading world media and evoke a lively response from the global public. Every new statement made by the ex-president is instantly picked up by numerous analysts, political scientists, and international relations experts, who meticulously search his words for hidden clues, hints, and signals about the United States' possible future moves on the complex chessboard of world politics. Perhaps his words are not merely an expression of personal hope for a swift end to the war, but a carefully calculated strategic signal addressed to both allies and adversaries that the United States, despite all difficulties and obstacles, continues to actively seek ways to participate in the diplomatic process and intends to retain its role as the chief arbiter in key international disputes. For now, the world community can only passively observe the unfolding events and wonder. If he returns to the White House, will Donald Trump truly be able to exert real, tangible influence on the course of events and reverse the tragic trend? Or will all his loud declarations and ambitious promises remain just words, beautiful rhetoric reflecting the personal ambitions of one man against the backdrop of a giant, complex, and multi-dimensional international chess game, where every piece has its weight, and the price of error is incredibly high? One thing can be said with absolute certainty. The conflict in Ukraine continues to remain at the very center of world political attention, defining the balance of power and the international agenda. Every new comment, every remark from such an influential and controversial figure as Donald Trump instantly becomes a reason for endless analytical discussions, heated debates within the expert community, and faint hopes among ordinary people, even if the harsh reality on the ground, on the battlefields, and in the destroyed cities remains completely different, unchanged, and bleak. However, within Ukraine itself, a no less loud internal political scandal has been developing recently, related to accusations of corruption in the highest echelons of power. Many observers believe this scandal could soon create so much turmoil and political upheaval that it would overshadow even the current challenges. The political stability of President Zelensky's team, sitting in their high offices, is being seriously tested. This multi-layered story, encompassing both Trump's diplomatic maneuvers and internal Ukrainian exposés, keeps the whole world in a state of tense anticipation. And it is entirely possible that in the end, these words and actions, like a snowball, will grow into something truly global, with long-term consequences for the entire architecture of European security, rather than merely remaining a feature of the current news cycle. Those are the complex, multifaceted, and, alas, alarming news we have to report today, friends. What do you think about all this? Do you find Trump's optimism justified? Or is it merely campaign rhetoric? Do you believe in the possibility of a swift, peaceful settlement? Please share your opinion, your thoughts, and your arguments in the comments below. We are very interested to know your point of view. Until we meet again, in new episodes and discussions. Wishing you all a good day, and of course, more peace and tranquility on our planet.